Okay, I'm going to start. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today to our session on how to make your impact, how to make a difference while shaping your dream career. Today, we have KPMG. So we have Ashleen, who's a partner of KPMG, who's a wealth of experience in the industry. And Kyle graduated a few years ago and has been working on a number of large-scale renewable energy transactions. They're both graduates of Queen's. They'll spend a bit of time talking to us about their organisation and their role, and specifically how you can make an impact in your professional and personal life. They'll give us an insight into some key projects they've been involved in, which have an impact on society, and how sustainability is becoming crucial within all of our lives. There'll be an opportunity at the end for some questions, so don't be afraid to pop your questions in the chat function. And I'm now going to pass over to Ashleen and Kyle, who are going to tell us about how to make an impact.
Thank you, Victoria, and good afternoon, everyone. And I am truly delighted to connect with you this afternoon as part of the programme of events in the run-up to the Spring Recruitment Fair tomorrow, and to have this opportunity to share some of my career journey hindsights with you to hopefully give you some foresight as you now embark on your career path after your time at Queen's. I'm very mindful all, or most of you, will not know me, so I thought it'd be useful to give you some insight on me. So back a couple of decades ago, so you're all probably trying to work out my age now, I was actually in your shoes, in a lecture hall back in the old social sciences building in the quad at Queen's, thinking about what was I going to do. And as that undergraduate in economics and accounting at Queen's, I had to really set about asking myself, what did I really want to do? How was I going to be fulfilled in life? And particularly as I wanted to pursue a career in professional services. And as the eldest daughter of a farmer and a nurse, my parents were not fully embedded in the corporate world. So therefore, I sought out the Queen's Career Service that back then was located just beside what is now, as you all know, the Computer Sciences building at the bottom of the Malone Road. And then I entered into what was known as the accountancy milk round. And back then we had the big 6 firms, which today many of you will know as the big 4 professional services accounting firms. And with no instrument at that time, you have to remember, we did not have the benefit of smartphones. We didn't even have the internet. So I'm really showing you my age now. But the bit for me was actually seeking out as much information as I could from the Queen's Career Service and what was publicly available, mostly in business journals and the broadsheet newspapers back then that I bought in the Students' Union, to get a better insight into those firms. So I applied to all of those big 6 firms, and I was fortunate enough to get job offers with all of them. And you might ask why. And it wasn't that I was first place in my class at Queen's, because I frankly wasn't. But when I look back, it was very much about the purposeful summer work experience and employment that I sought out. And that all started off in the summer after my second year of my undergraduate degree at Queen's, when I was fortunate enough to get on to what was called the Shell Technology Enterprise Programme, STEP, where I embarked on an 8-week placement with a small business in Northern Ireland to undertake a Pacific project. We'll not get into the detail today about the specifics of that project, but it was the actual experience and the opportunity and the impact that I made in seeking out that impactful work experience that I certainly believe to this day, when I look back and people ask me how you got all those job offers, was actually what allowed me to stand out from my peers and the other pool of candidates. And indeed, while doing that work experience, I was fortunate that I then got asked to come back to actually coordinate the Shell Technology Enterprise Programme in Northern Ireland. And that was then looking after the 40 students that were placed in businesses across Northern Ireland. And that was in the summer after my third year, final year, when I did my degree at Queen's, and also the following summer when I went on to do my postgraduate diploma at Queen's. And I have to say, it was that experience that really then triggered my genuine interest in building up my network and having a better understanding of the Northern Ireland economy, particularly in terms of the many family businesses privately owned businesses in Northern Ireland, as well as how government worked. Actually, how did it all work to deliver those public services? So one of my first messages to you today is it is never too early to start building your network, even among your peers in your class and your friendship groups at Queen's, because you never know where you will bump into those individuals at a later time in your career. I still today, people who I haven't seen in 20 years, I know I can now reach out to them. We have that common ground in terms of our time at Queen's, and that can help me originate my work for KPMG. So that is one of the takeaways, is the power of the network. It's never too early to connect with people and build that network. You might then ask why, with those 6 job offers, why I chose KPMG. And honestly, and I mean honestly, it was the people. From those initial conversations I had with the individuals that I engaged with at the accountancy milk round, the careers fairs, I could genuinely see a difference in them. They were so passionate and really focused on making a difference and having real purpose. And that stood out for me. They were all willing to go the extra mile and play as proper equal team members to get the job done. And that was why, genuinely, because all the firms offered excellent training, but it was the people and their passion and purpose that really was the big magnet that brought me to KPMG. And I'm proud to say, 2 decades on, I'm still with the firm. And as some of my colleagues would say, I bleed blue, our corporate colours in KPMG. So having then embarked on a training contract with KPMG, I trained in our data advisory team back then and did my 3-year training contract, qualifying as a chartered accountant at the turn of the millennium. I feel so old now when I'm talking to you all. But after 3 really, really thoroughly enjoyable years in corporate finance, I got the opportunity then to specialise in what was called project finance. You might ask, what is that? But it's looking at major infrastructure in Northern Ireland and how that was going to be funded, financed, and more importantly, delivered. Because our infrastructure, be that our roads that allow us to connect from A to B, our digital infrastructure as well, that has really been so instrumental in terms of us all being able to work remotely and study remotely during the last 2 years, or be that the hospitals, for example, that hopefully prolong our lives. It was actually looking at the power of that infrastructure, actually delivering that infrastructure on citizens, communities, urban and rural communities, on their personal lives, but also their working lives. And that was something that really, really struck a chord with me, was in terms of me, be it advising a government client or advising a contractor, an engineering business on the delivery, the funding of that infrastructure. That to me, I said, we're making a real impact through the work that we do. It might take 2-3 years. For example, when I look back and I see M1 Westlink, which is obviously a key strategic rail corridor here in Belfast, I look at Titanic Belfast, our biggest ever tourist attraction, and I look at the many schools and colleges that I was involved in helping deliver over the years. That for me was the real important part of our work, was actually making a real lasting, positive, permanent difference with people that live here in Northern Ireland. And then in terms of going through my career, one of the things that stands out for me was going into rooms, particularly as a female. I would have been going into rooms where there might have been a business dinner with 300 people, perhaps in the Great Hall of Queen's. And I had to say to myself, how do I start to connect and engage as probably one of the few females in the room? And that for me was, you need to find common ground with people, beyond their day jobs. What is that? Is it the field of sport? Is it arts? What is it? And that was something I always sought out, was before I went to a large event, who else is going? How can I work that room? And how can I make common ground connections with the people in that room to make an impact? And that is something to this day that still stood me in good stead, was that how you find common ground with people to allow you better connect with people, so that hopefully you are memorable. And at some point then down the line, you will do business together, or perhaps get involved in a corporate social responsible project, whatever that may be as well. So that's my other takeaway, is always try and find common ground with people. Even if you're going into a room where you feel you're alone, there's no one else like you, we're all human, and it is the power of just those small stories when we do start conversations as well. You can go far. Then thirdly, the other piece is actually looking beyond the actual, in your shoes today, beyond your study, all the different sports and social clubs that you are involved in, actually make the time. I know we're all busy in our study and work and lives, etc., but make the time to have conversations with new people, find out what their interests are, because that, again, for me, is you'd be surprised in terms of how much common ground you actually then do have as the conversation develops. So it's always really important to seize every opportunity you have, again, going back to building that network and better connecting with people. And then finally, in terms of more recent years, some of the projects that I've been involved in with KPMG, and indeed one that Queen's has been instrumental in helping come to fruition, and that is the Belfast Region City Deal. Some of you may have heard that, particularly in the press over the last couple of months, in terms of it is a first for Northern Ireland. It is where we have additional funding over the funding that our executive would have got through Barnett formula. This is additional funding for Northern Ireland to actually deliver projects that will shift our economic dial and ensure that that economic growth is inclusive. Back to a point I made earlier, that no child, no citizen, community is left behind, that that economic growth that the City Deal projects, the programme of investment is going to deliver, it will actually ensure that everyone benefits. And the key important point in all of that project for me was the Belfast Region City Deal would not have happened without the foresight of and the brave and bold leadership that we had within Belfast City Council to reach out to other councils in Northern Ireland, and at that time it was another 5 councils, but also to reach out to both of our local universities, obviously Queen's and indeed Ulster as well. And for me, it was the power of collaboration, all those stakeholders coming together to actually look at what is the opportunity, what is the real prize. And that prize was a City Deal, which in simple terms was additional funding for Northern Ireland to deliver game-changing projects, specifically in terms of Queen's and Ulster are leading the way on 5 innovation projects, new centres of excellence that ultimately will hopefully deliver better jobs and new opportunities for all of you. This is where Northern Ireland is leading the way in our high growth priority sectors. And again, today I don't have time to do a deep dive on that, but there is a real opportunity with this Belfast Region City Deal that is coming to Belfast and the wider region, and indeed all of Northern Ireland. And I'm proud to say, you'll see there in the photograph that was ourselves, your Vice Chancellor and Professor Ian Greer, back a couple of years ago, whenever we were just about to sign the heads of terms for the Belfast Region City Deal. We had all gone across to Westminster as a public sector and private sector delegation of ambassadors to really put our pitch, what was so compelling, why we needed to attract this additional funding from Westminster, London for Northern Ireland, Belfast. And again, that just shows you what's possible. And it was the power of that network and that collaboration to make a long, permanent, lasting, positive impact. Another then project that's close to all of our hearts. Some of you may be aware of the Eden Project, but obviously we're all facing now the biggest challenge of our lifetime, and that being the race to net zero, the climate change. And I had the privilege back last November of hosting an unprecedented, unplugged session with Sir Tim Smith, who is the co-founder of the Eden Project. The first project was down in Cornwall. You'll see from a couple of photographs there. And we all really hope that there will be an Eden Project come to Northern Ireland. At the moment, the proposal is to do that on the banks of the River Foyle up in Derry, Londonderry. But for me, it just was actually engaging in a debate discussion to actually make a change. And again, that was the collaboration with KPMG and indeed Queen's. It was the Chief Executives Club of Queen's that we were able to get Sir Tim Smith here to Northern Ireland and indeed give not just the business community, but the students at Queen's the opportunity to really engage with him and having a real good debate about something that is so important, the biggest challenge, as I said, of our generation as well. So what I would say to you before I pass over to Kyle, who will do a deeper dive on the whole sustainability agenda in terms of a lot of the work that we do in KPMG, but I would urge you all, take the time to think, how are you going to differentiate yourself, stand out from the crowd and make your impact now as you embark in those initial conversations with prospective employers at tomorrow's career fair. Also, the power of your network. You're never too young early in life to start building that network. And my advice to you is, look, back yourself, believe in yourself, Go that extra mile. Your future is bright. You will go far. There is great opportunities out there. And one final takeaway is I always have said to myself, working hard for something you don't care about, to me, that's stress. Whereas working hard for something you truly love, that's passion and purpose and making an impact. So thank you. And I will now pass over to my great colleague, Kyle Tumbleby, to share his insights. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ashleen. And it's a great honor to be here today speaking to all of you who are now considering what to do when you leave the halls of Queen's and head out into the big bad world. I'm speaking to you as an ex-Queen's student myself. I studied business economics at Queen's 3 or 4 years ago now. During that time, I had the opportunity to take a placement year, which is something I would advise everybody to do. It's a great way to immerse yourself in the working world in a way that doesn't deter from your academic studies. I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to join placement year at KPMG. It was a year long and I got thrown into the trenches with everybody else. And I always maintain that that is how you learn. That's what you should look for in any opportunity is this company, are these people, is this team going to throw me in at the deep end and help me learn and help me build myself up? And that's exactly what I got. So fast forward a year after working on a number of big engagements with big clients, having responsibility, accountability, I was fortunate enough to be offered a contract at KPMG. And of course I took it. I went all in and I took it. And very much so, as Ashton said, for the people. When I was looking around, surveying the market, and I spoke to Queen's Careers myself, who were a fantastic team, fantastic asset. We find very quickly that a lot of the big four will take you the same route. We all join the ranks and we become accounting trainees. We study for three years. We sit exams. So for me, it was important to find the key differentiator, and that was the people. I felt like I was coming back to KPMG to form part of a team where we built camaraderie. We've got great rapport, great relationships. So for me, that was the key differentiator of why I decided to come back. I then went back to Queen's, like many of you are doing now, sitting your final year exams. And of course, there's a few nail-biting moments and some big essays, a few horrible exams, but it's most certainly worth it. And I was lucky enough at the end of my time at Queen's to graduate top of my year in business economics. Again, fantastic course that arms you for the big bad world. I then joined KPMG as a trainee, accounting trainee. I joined in our audit department initially. Audit, again, a department that provides assurance and comfort to the minds of companies and regulators and shareholders that what the company is doing and what the company is saying is a fair and true reflection. That gave me a good opportunity to work with some of Northern Ireland's biggest companies. I then got the opportunity to move into a smaller sub-department, which was regulatory based, but again, a very team-focused contingent of KPMG. I spent a year in there working with some fantastic colleagues who certainly showed me the ropes. And that's one thing I would always tell people is find somebody that you can align yourself with, that's willing to take the journey with you, that's willing to invest in you and allow you to grow. And that's what I found very early in my career. I then got an opportunity that came up internally to move into the advisory team in corporate finance. I was lucky enough then to move into the corporate finance mergers and acquisitions team. So what we do in there is typically we buy and sell companies amongst many other things, both in a Northern Irish context and sometimes in a more global context. The majority of the work that I've done to date has been in the renewable sector. And that's, again, another important lesson is when you are looking to position yourself into a career, find something that you can really put your passion and your beliefs towards. For me, I'm a strong advocate of sustainability. And in many cases, you'll find that companies, large and small, are some of the biggest contributors to global emissions. And as Northern Ireland is trying to do by 2030, we're hoping to reduce our carbon emissions down to net zero. So for me, it was important And I had a long think to myself. I thought, what is the biggest impact I can have? Of course, I can perhaps eat less meat. I can reuse my bottle and invest in a good reusable bottle. But at the end of the day, they're good actions, but smaller actions. So in joining KPMG's corporate finance team, I look for opportunities in our Sustainable Futures team. And that Sustainable Futures team predominantly works in renewable transactions and renewable consultancy for some of Northern Ireland's biggest businesses. They're advising companies how to decarbonize. We're advising companies how to invest in renewable energy streams such as wind turbines, solar energy, anaerobic digestion plants, all methods and means to decarbonize. And what you'll find now is a lot of the big social media companies, some of the biggest that you could imagine, are now coming to KPMG's Sustainable Futures practice to find ways of how they could decarbonize, and not only because they're the biggest users of data and electricity to power their servers, but because their shareholders are now demanding, they're militant in their protests for these companies to decarbonize. So I've been very lucky to work in there in my KPMG career. To date, in the renewable sector, I valued close to 120 million assets in value. That spreads right across wind turbines, solar, hydro dams and hydro power stations, anaerobic digestion plants. And for those of you, much like myself, when I heard that word, I thought, what on earth is that? Basically, that's big tanks that are placed most commonly in an agricultural setting and farms. And what those tanks do is, using anaerobic digestion, a chemical process, they break down food, they break down slurry, they break down dairy and create a gas. That gas is then used, heated, consumed by engines to create electricity, which is then a renewable source. So you're taking, in many instances, cow manure and silage for the farmers out there, taking that and using that as a renewable source to create gas, and in turn, gas energy, electricity. That's what anaerobic digestion is. On the other side as well, in terms of mergers and acquisitions, I've been involved to date in approximately 80 to 90 million pounds worth of renewable energy transactions. And recently was part of the team that closed one of the biggest wind portfolio sales, onshore wind portfolio sales in Northern Ireland in recent years, which was a deal that closed for 60 million pounds and has been publicised quite well in the renewable sector. So that's my background and where I'm coming from. And these past couple of years have been a bit strange. They've been a bit strange for everybody. We've been very much in a technological world, constrained by limitations on what we can do because of this awful virus. And I find now that many people are wondering, how can we make an impact in this new digital world, this and increasingly a new hybrid world, where I'm having to speak to people over video and take interviews over video. How can I really get my personality across, are the questions that I'm seeing quite a lot. And my advice to you is actually take this as a massive opportunity. When I was at Queen's, we had to do many presentations, and I watched a lot of people be very nervous of having to present and communicate in front of people. Now you get this opportunity to communicate from the comfort of your own home. And what you'll find very quickly is that helps level the playing field. You're able to sit in more comfort and communicate to other people. So I always say, seize this opportunity and use it to get your personality across. Use the digital world to level the playing field. No longer do you have to sit in a room in front of lots of people, albeit Ashleen and I will always contend that's the best way to build a rapport. But now you've got this opportunity where everybody is equal on the screen, and you can strike up a bit of banter with people from corporate backgrounds in high-powered jobs. You can strike up a bit of a rapport and a bit of banter over everybody's technological inability, for a start, or if somebody has left themselves on mute. So I would certainly say, use this new digital age to your advantage. You, as Queen students, are of the age of technology. So utilize it to your advantage. to tell you a story of what I used to do to help get myself across and make an impact when I'm speaking both in person and on a digital basis. When I was at Queen's and I was having to do presentations, which a lot of you will have to do an awful lot of, I found that one of the best ways was to sit in my room, turn my iPad on, and record myself pitching and presenting to see how I got on. And that's advice that I pass to both my fellow students, my sisters who are at Queen's, and to anybody coming through into KPMG on the placement or summer internship basis. I always advise it. It's a great way to learn how to present. But that's absolutely what we're doing now. We're watching ourselves on a screen, seeing how we communicate. So certainly take that piece of advice and absolutely use it. Another way that I found over the years and coming into KPMG to really make an impact, it's finding a company that aligns with your beliefs. And that could be sustainability. It could be gender diversity. It could be empowerment, as Ashleen said, walking into a room as one of very few females in the professional practice, and in many instances at events and conventions, it can be daunting. So find a company that can certainly advocate your beliefs. And I'm lucky that I work for a company that does advocate across the board on sustainability, empowerment, diversity. They're very, very important. And it's an awful lot easier to create an impact when you have passion fueling behind you. As I mentioned, for me, it was important to work in a sustainability context, as often I always find that it's the large corporates or the big businesses that are the key polluters. So now, as part of KPMG's Sustainable Futures practice, I help work and advise companies on how they decarbonize, how they can look to be, create more reusable products. How can they reduce emissions, be it through reduction in transport, be it through hybrid working, be it through decarbonization with the energy. And I find that I'm able to really drive that because I'm passionate about it. And I find that I want to learn more about it because I'm passionate about it. And you'll often find that it's always easier when you like something to really throw yourself into it. And that will help you come across in a very, very positive way. If you can fuel your day-to-day job with passion and conviction, passion and purpose, then certainly it's a lot easier of a job to do. For me, when I moved into corporate finance, I was thrown in very much at the deep end and asked to value a large offshore wind farm. I'd been there for about 30 minutes before this task had been asked of me, and the way to get through that is absolutely confidence, confidence in yourself, confidence in the ability that you can research, that you can deliver, and that I would say would be probably my biggest tip and my biggest piece of advice is build your confidence. Build your confidence. Build your confidence with knowledge. Build your confidence by being a sponge, absorb knowledge off of everybody around you. And a key decision in that, and a key thing that you can get across when you're doing an interview for a company or perhaps joining the ranks of a company is ask how you can grow and how you can, what facilities are there, what team members are there to help you grow and help you be more confident. I was lucky enough as well to work with a lot of big clients, and a key skill in building your confidence is learning how to read the room. We as KPMG will work with many people from a corporate background, some large companies that you will have heard of, certainly home brands that you will know, big Northern Irish businesses, and some businesses that you won't have heard of because they operate in these sectors. One of the best things to do is be able to read the room and understand who you're speaking to. Now that can be as simple as just listening to see who's there, see what they're talking about, see how they communicate, and the other part is getting involved and being able to practice and talk and communicate to audiences of different backgrounds, different sectors, and different areas on the scale of hierarchy. That's something that you can practice yourself. And it's one thing that I made sure I done at my time at Queen's, and that's possible through getting involved in the societies. For example, the Queen's Trading Club, The other side of that would be summer internships. I see a lot of people come in on summer internships in KPMG and leave with a myriad of skills, one of which is more confidence. You've been in and you've got this period of 3 or 4 weeks where you can come in, work on big clients, build your confidence, realize your ability. So I would always suggest that it's very important to get involved in those as a great confidence builder. And I also think in terms of building your confidence, it's a great idea to come with a solutions-based mindset. That's very important, and that's your outlook. That's how you come across. People always, I find, come across more confident when they're coming forward with solutions, and that's what we hope to do at KPMG whenever we speak with a client. And to give you and to tell you a story, I was working on a large client, wind client, and they were great chaps and ladies, and they were a fantastic team. But of course, they were struggling with problems with their wind turbines, landlords giving them problems, rent not being paid in time, and of course, these are big problems for a business. So we find that if we can get them in a one-to-one setting, speak to them, provide them with solutions, help them coordinate with clients. You know, let's get the rent sorted. Let's have negotiations with the landlords. Let's speak to the farmers. Let's communicate with the farmers. That's a great way to come across as confident, that you're willing to step forward, engage, provide a solution, and to execute the solution. It is an excellent way to come across and build your confidence. And the last piece of advice that I'd like to give you is about communication. Communication is absolutely vital, and it's something that I had garnered a lot of. I'd worked a lot on at my time at Queen's, be that through presentations, be that through chatting to fellow students, and then in the work context, communication is absolutely critical. And there's a few things that you can do to increase your communication. Firstly, practice communicating with your friends in terms of when you've got a deadline with uni, you've got a group project, get the communication flowing, build those channels, really work on getting your point across in a clear, concise manner. It's absolutely critical. And again, the likes of summer internships are a brilliant way to do this, because they're learning to communicate in the more corporate setting. When you do that, you can really build on confidence as well. Communication and confidence go absolutely hand in hand. And they're two things that any employer, any business, any corporate individual really they place a lot of importance on. So I would definitely recommend that. And I always find that communicating, if you're in a presentational setting, use your Microsoft Teams, put it on record yourself speaking, see how it comes across, see if you're getting your point across clearly. Use those little tools that you have to really put yourself across and to ensure that you're coming across in a clear and concise manner. It's something that's helped me a lot. I naturally enjoy speaking, but that's only because I've built on it over all these years through various through putting myself in uncomfortable situations. Stick your hand up, volunteer to go to the Queen's Convention, volunteer to go to the careers fair. In a work context, volunteer to get involved in the job. Put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, and very, very quickly you'll notice that you're considerably more comfortable in those uncomfortable situations as time goes by. You might not notice it immediately, but soon you'll be able to read the room, understand how what sort of context you should be speaking in, what sort of tone you should be speaking in. And of course, all of this is absolutely possible. And I would definitely say it's a little bit more possible in the digital world, where you have the comfort of your own home around you, and you can speak and listen to how other people are communicating with big high profile clients or colleagues in the working function. So there are a few of my tips that I've gathered over my short 3.5-year career at KPMG, but coming off the back of being a Queen's student myself, I realized that how important these things are coming into the working world. So thanks very much for listening and tuning into what I have to say.
Well, thank you both, Ashleen and Kyle. there's definitely a lot of really good information for students. You know, I think that the practicing your communication skills with your friends, that's a really good thing to do, because we've all been living in a virtual world for 2 years. And one of the questions that came through was around, you know, how do you kind of make your impact in a virtual world? It's quite, and I understand that, because we've all had the experience of being in an office. So, you know, hopefully for internships or placement roles with your sales, then it may be in person as opposed to having to do it virtually, or maybe it'll be a hybrid approach. What would you suggest?
Certainly, it's in creating that impact virtually. It's just so important to engage. Seize that opportunity to engage. When you see 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 faces up on a screen, it's too easy to sit back, have yourself on mute, have your camera switched off. But for me, if I'm looking to be impressed by somebody, to bring somebody onto my team, I'm always waiting to see who switches the mute off, who puts the camera on, and who is willing to step forward and engage. That's the best way. That is the best way to make yourself memorable in many contexts, be it an interview, be it you know, looking to get involved in a particular job. But let's say more so in an interview context, where it's very important to be memorable and to be remembered positively. And that's where you can certainly utilize a couple of things that I find when I'm engaging digitally. First one is get your camera on, always put it on, and always be looking to be engaged. There's nothing worse when we are having a one-to-one in-person meeting. We always look at each other. We don't look around at, you know, trying to do a little bit of work in the background, or sitting on your phone. It's so important to use that digital element, treat it like a face-to-face, but remember that you've got the comfort and the confidence of being in your own home behind you, which is very important. Another one is always log on early, check your connection. Nothing more frustrating in an interview context or a work context of somebody with a dodgy connection trying to speak. Always check that before and do a quick, as I call it, do a quick recce to make sure that your connection's stable and that you can get your point across. Because even the most confident speaker can be handicapped by the technology and your internet connection.
We've all had to deal with that over the last 2 years.
Absolutely. And the last one is when you're in that digital context, particularly, you know, if I think of how we engage with clients, and our clients would range from fantastic Northern Irish businesses to large divisions of much larger corporate entities. You've got this opportunity now to take your time. You can take your time and really think about what you want to say in a digital context. You don't need to feel because you're in a room surrounded by people that you need to speak or you need to speak quickly or talk a lot. Now, in this digital context, you can certainly take your time, build your confidence, and work on your tone and how you speak, and read the room. And it's absolutely possible to read the room even in a digital environment, because you can see who's engaged, who's speaking a lot, whose tone is in a particular way. And one of the best skills you can absolutely have is flexibility. Flexibility to change your own tone, how you speak, how you deliver, whether you pause. They're all great ways, all great, I suppose, is it oratory ways to create an impact in the digital context.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I'll maybe just add to that, Victoria and Kyle's way. Well, just a couple of tips. If you can, and it's a virtual interview conversation, try not to use the smartphone. Actually use a desktop, a laptop as well. It's a much better experience for the individual panel that are interviewing you. Also, should you be asked to do a presentation, what I find, I still will stand up, even though I'm doing it from my own home, because I just feel I have more impact. I can own the room much better. So I would encourage you, get the books to stack up the laptop.
Good idea.
Actually stand up and speak. And that eye contact that Kyle talked on, it's so important that you are truly engaged in that moment, in that conversation, because your passion, your purpose, that impact, that will happen and come across. So just a few little additional tips to think about as you prepare.
And just conscious of time, I've a couple more questions. In terms of, you know, Ashleen, it's two separate questions, but for you, Ashleen, you talked about the impact that the internship had for you. You know, is there internships available with KPMG, and are they live at the moment?
They absolutely are for this summer. Our internship program went live before Christmas, and it actually closed 3 days ago. So it did. But there is other internships that will come up then for the following summer, because I'm conscious not everyone will be penultimate final year of their graduate course. So for those of you, there will also be internships for summer 2023 as well. If you log on to KPMG Careers Ireland, all that insight is there in terms of not just internships, but also placement years, as well as then for those of you who want to go the chartered accountancy qualification, there is the 3.5 year training contracts. And indeed, for the students that don't want to go that route, there is also lots of opportunities through our Assured Skills Academies that we are running for the Belfast Centre of Excellence in KPMG, that's focused on cyber, applied intelligence and data analytics. So plenty of opportunities for talent. Thank you.
Wow, that's super. That's always what students want to hear, that there's a number of opportunities available. And Kyle, in terms of your placement then, just as the final question, what did you do while you were on your placement with KPMG?
A lot.
You talked about it being very impactful for you.
No, absolutely. There is a worry out there that certainly at the time whenever I was applying for placements, that placements just make tea and coffee. That could not be any more false. That's, rubbish that statement, throw it in the bin. Whenever I joined KPMG, I immediately was involved in a team, and within a couple of days after training, I was working with clients. Now, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? Day-to-day basis, I could be picking up the phone and talking to clients about regulatory problems that they were having. I could be helping them out in terms of a bit of financial analysis, which we would do on the likes of Excel and our own KPMG standardized programs. I would be working heavily in a team where we would all have different roles depending on what client we were working on. For example, if we were on an audit, I might be looking at financial information for the client out at the client site, working as part of the team to come to a conclusion as to how that company looks from a financial perspective. In an advisory context, so where I am at the moment, I did spend 6 weeks in advisory when I was on my placement. So again, there was the opportunity there at the time to get a bit of exposure in a department that really interested me, as well as the audit side of the placement. In there, I was working on research, researching for some of Northern Ireland's biggest businesses, researching in particular sectors, using different tools to find out company information, company financials, company news. And I was working directly with the managers and directors at the time to provide that information. So great exposure on a day-to-day basis, which is very important. As well, we would sometimes do social activities. So there were social activities. KPMG pride themselves on being a very sociable company, and we're often, pre-pandemic certainly, we were at many events, barbecues and team building days that brought everybody together. So there was a lot in my placement year. I certainly didn't have any dull days, and I was definitely challenged on a daily basis, which is important for growth.
Absolutely. That's what the students want to hear, you know, that it's an interesting placement, that they're going to grow from it, and they're going to kind of go back with new skills and experience for their final year. So it's really good.
You become one of the rank. You definitely do. When I was on placement, I felt just as important and just as empowered as those coming in as a full-time graduate. And that was important, that I was getting the same exposure and the same skill set. And that ultimately meant that when I came back to KPMG, I was hitting the ground running. I was ready to jump in at the deep end.
That's absolutely super. Thank you so much for that, Kyle. That's all of our questions. I'm just conscious of the time. So just moving on, we have our careers fair tomorrow, so KPMG will be attending. So for our students, if you log on to Graduate you can log on and follow KPMG. You can arrange to have a chat with somebody from KPMG. And also then Ashleen referred to the social media, so that just follow their social media for other roles, because there's plenty of opportunities coming up within KPMG. So thank you both for your time, Ashleen and Kyle. It's been really informative and some really good tips for our students, and I've no doubt that they'll have gained a lot of really good information and some good tips for especially impact in the virtual world, because we're all learning, but there's some great information that you provided. So thank you very much for that today. For our students, there is an offer of a prize draw for a £25 retail voucher. So if you complete a very short questionnaire at the end of this, you could be in with an opportunity to win that voucher. And just to remind you, the fair is on tomorrow from 2 till 6. So have a look at the Graduate Land platform. Thank you both so much today. It's been really, really great to have you on board.
Very welcome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, and good luck, everyone. Your future's bright. Go seize those opportunities.
Thank you.